The key scraped in the lock like a reluctant confession. Sarah Thompson pushed the heavy oak door of Willow Manor and stepped into a hush so complete it felt like the house had been holding its breath for decades. Dust motes drifted in the slanted light from the cracked stained glass window above the staircase, painting the foyer in fractured reds and blues. She was 26, alone, and carrying the last box from her hatchback. The movers had refused to enter after dusk the day before, muttering about bad air and old stories. Sarah had laughed, city girl, practical, inheritor of a crumbling estate she'd never seen. Her great-aunt Eleanor had died 3 months ago, leaving the house and everything in it to the only living relative who hadn't contested the will. She set the box down on the warped parquet floor. The air smelled of cedar, mildew, and something metallic, like old pennies. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard sighed. Sarah told herself it was the house settling, nothing more. She had a week before her new job at the county library started. Plenty of time to sort through Aunt Eleanor's hoards and decide what to keep, what to sell, what to burn. The ground floor was a museum of faded grandeur. Velvet settees bleeding horsehair, portraits whose eyes had flaked away, a grandfather clock frozen at 3:17. Sarah wandered into the kitchen, found a working faucet, and filled a glass. The water tasted of iron. She drank anyway. Jet lag from the overnight drive clung to her bones. Night came early in November, sliding purple fingers across the windows. Sarah built a fire in the cavernous hearth, the flames hissing against damp logs. She ate cold pizza from the box, then climbed the staircase with a flashlight, the beam jittering over peeling wallpaper patterned with thorny roses. Her bedroom, Eleanor's old room, was at the end of the hall. A 4-poster bed sagged under a canopy of moth-eaten lace. On the nightstand sat a single object that didn't belong to the 1940s decor, a leather-bound diary, its cover cracked and soft as shed snakeskin. Sarah picked it up. The clasp was broken. Pages fluttered like trapped birds. Gold lettering on the spine had worn away, but she could just make out the initials EVT, Eleanor Victoria Thorne, her great-aunt's maiden name. Curiosity overrode exhaustion. She propped the flashlight on the pillow and opened to the first entry, dated September 12, 1908. They say the house remembers. I say it never forgets. Father brought us here after Mother's accident, claiming fresh country air would mend what the city broke. But the walls listen, Sarah. Yes, I know your name though you are not yet born, and they speak when the clocks strike 3. Listen for the children. They are not ours. Sarah frowned. Children. The family tree she'd memorized showed no cousins, no siblings for Eleanor. She turned the page. October 3, 1908. Amelia laughed at dinner and a glass shattered in the cupboard though no hand touched it. Father blamed drafts. I blame the boy in the mirror who is not my brother. A gust rattled the window pane. Sarah's pulse quickened, but she blamed the wind. Old houses, old stories. She read on, the fire downstairs popping like distant gunfire. The diary spanned years, each entry shorter, ink fading from black to rust. Eleanor wrote of footsteps that matched no living feet, of doors opening onto corridors that hadn't existed the day before. In 1923 she described finding a child's shoe, tiny, patent leather, beneath the attic stairs. No child had lived in Willow Manor since her own infancy. She kept the shoe in a cigar box. Sarah made a mental note to search the attic. By midnight her eyes burned. She marked her place with a receipt and slid the diary under the pillow. Sleep came in fragments, dreams of corridors that stretched like taffy, of small hands tugging her nightgown. She woke once to the sound of whispering directly above the bed. The ceiling was silent plaster. She rolled over, heart hammering, and told herself it was the radiator. Morning arrived grey and reluctant. Sarah brewed coffee on a hot plate, the only appliance she'd bothered to plug in. While it percolated, she explored. The attic door stuck. When it gave way, a puff of frigid air smelled of lilacs and decay. Boxes, trunks, a dressmaker's dummy wearing a moth-chewed wedding gown. In the fahoud no cousins, no siblings for Eleanor. She turned the page. October 3, 1908. Amelia laughed at dinner and a glass shattered in the cupboard though no hand touched it. Father blamed drafts. I blame the boy in the mirror who is not my brother. A gust rattled the window pane. Sarah's pulse quickened, but she blamed the wind. Old houses, old stories. She read on, the fire downstairs popping like distant gunfire. The diary spanned years, each entry shorter, ink fading from black to rust. Eleanor wrote of footsteps that matched no living feet, of doors opening onto corridors that hadn't existed the day before. In 1923 she described finding a child's shoe, tiny, patent leather, beneath the attic stairs. No child had lived in Willow Manor since her own infancy. She kept the shoe in a cigar box. Sarah made a mental note to search the attic. By midnight her eyes burned. She marked her place with a receipt and slid the diary under the pillow. Sleep came in fragments, dreams of corridors that stretched like taffy, of small hands tugging her nightgown. She woke once to the sound of whispering directly above the bed. The ceiling was silent plaster. She rolled over, heart hammering, and told herself it was the radiator. Morning arrived grey and reluctant. Sarah brewed coffee on a hot plate, the only appliance she'd bothered to plug in. While it percolated, she explored. The attic door stuck. When it gave way, a puff of frigid air smelled of lilacs and decay. Boxes, trunks, a dressmaker's dummy wearing a moth-chewed wedding gown. In the far corner sat the cigar box. Inside, one child's shoe, black leather cracked, sole imprinted with the name Amelia in faded ink. The corner sat the cigar box. Inside, one child's shoe, black leather cracked, sole imprinted with the name Amelia in faded ink. Sarah's skin prickled. She carried the shoe downstairs and laid it beside the diary. The next entry was dated the day after Amelia's supposed laughter. October 4th, 1908. The shoe is gone from the hall table. I found it under my pillow. Someone is playing games. Sarah spent the day cataloguing rooms, but the diary tugged at her like a hook. She read while eating canned soup, while scrubbing grime from the clawfoot tub, while the sun bled out behind the skeletal oaks. Eleanor's handwriting grew spidery, frantic. 1931. They want the locket. Father's locket with mother's portrait. I hid it in the chimney brick, but they know. The boy, Thomas, he says his name is, stands at the foot of my bed and asks why I keep what isn't mine. His neck is wrong. It bends too far. Sarah touched her own throat. The house creaked around her, a living thing. She found the chimney in the parlor, pried loose a soot-blackened brick, and there it was, a silver locket on a tarnished chain. Inside, a miniature portrait of a young woman with Sarah's own eyes. On the back, engraved, to EVT from MT 1899. MT, Margaret Thorne, Eleanor's mother, dead in a carriage accident when Eleanor was 7. Sarah's great-grandmother. She fastened the locket around her neck. It settled cold against her collarbone. That night the whispers returned. Clearer. Children's voices, overlapping, singing a nursery rhyme in rounds. Ring-a-ring-o roses, a pocket full of posies. Sarah sat up in bed. The diary lay open on the quilt. She hadn't touched it since dusk. A new entry glistened in fresh ink, though the pen beside it was dry. November 9th, 2025. You're wearing her face now. Give it back. The temperature plummeted. Frost spider-webbed across the window. Sarah's breath plumed white. She stumbled into the hall, flashlight beam slicing darkness. The whispers followed. Giggling. At the staircase, she saw them. 2 small figures at the bottom, a boy in knickerbockers and a girl in a pinafore, faces pale smudges. The boy's head lolled at an impossible angle. Sarah screamed. The figures vanished, but the front door slammed open though no wind stirred the curtains. Cold rushed in, carrying the scent of turned earth. She ran downstairs, shoes skidding on the runner. The children stood by the hearth, backs to her. The boy turned first. His neck vertebrae clicked like dice. You have grandmother's locket, he said, voice layered, as if spoken through water. She promised. The girl spun. Her eyes were hollow sockets leaking shadow. Amelia kept it. Eleanor kept it. Now you. Sarah backed against the banister. I didn't know. Take it. She fumbled with the clasp. It wouldn't open. The chain burned. The boy stepped forward. Not enough. The house needs blood to remember. Sarah bolted for the kitchen, slammed the door, braced a chair under the knob. Her phone had no signal, hadn't since she crossed the county line. Through the door she heard small feet pattering, the scrape of the chair sliding away though she held it fast. The knob turned. She grabbed a knife from the butcher block, more for courage than defense. The door creaked open. Empty hallway. But on the table sat the diary, open to a blank page. Words crawled across it like insects. Run. Sarah. They only play at night. She ran. Out the back door into the moonless yard, frost crunching underfoot. The garden was a ruin of overgrown boxwood and marble statues missing limbs. She aimed for the gate, but the path twisted, hedges closing behind her. Laughter echoed from the treetops. A root snagged her ankle. She fell hard, knife skittering away. When she looked up, the children knelt beside her. The girl stroked Sarah's hair with fingers cold as well water. "We were buried under the roses," she whispered. "Grandmother said we'd sleep until someone remembered our names." Sarah's teeth chattered. "Thomas. Amelia." The boy smiled, revealing teeth too sharp. "Good. Now remember this." He pressed something into her palm, the missing mate to the child's shoe. "Find the rest." Darkness swallowed her. She woke in her bed, sunlight striping the quilt. The locket lay on the nightstand, chain coiled like a snake. No frost, no whispers. Just birdsong and the smell of wood smoke from her own fire, long dead. On the pillow, the diary, closed. She opened it with trembling fingers. The threatening entry was gone, replaced by Eleanor's neat script. November 10th, 2025. She dreams now. The circle tightens. Sarah dressed quickly, stuffed the diary and both shoes into her backpack, and drove into town. The library where she'd soon work was a squat brick building with a helpful librarian named Mrs. Guer who remembered Eleanor fondly. "Odd duck," Mrs. Guer said, pouring tea. "Kept to herself after the war," said the house talked back. Sarah laid the locket on the table. "Know anything about a Margaret Thorne? Or children named Thomas and Amelia?" Mrs. Guer's cup paused halfway to her lips. Old scandal. 1908. Carriage overturned on the river road. Margaret and her two little ones. Thomas, 6, Amelia, 4. Bodies never found. Rumor was the husband, Reginald, drunk, drove them into the water. He hanged himself in the manor attic a month later. Eleanor was away at boarding school. Came back to an empty house. Sarah's mouth went dry. The roses. Planted over the old well, they say. To hide the smell. Back at Willow Manor, dusk painted the sky bruise purple. Sarah carried a shovel from the shed. The rose garden was a thicket of thorns. She hacked a path to the center where a stone birdbath stood cracked and dry. Beneath it, soil softer than the rest. She dug. 6 inches down, a child's rib cage, delicate as a bird's. Deeper, a skull no larger than an orange, jaw wired shut with silver thread. Amelia's shoe fit the tiny foot bones perfectly. Beside her, Thomas, neck vertebrae fused at a fatal angle. In his clenched fist, a scrap of paper preserved by the locket's chain. "Forgive us." Sarah wept without sound. She gathered the bones into a sheet, carried them inside, laid them on the dining table beneath the chandelier. The locket she placed between the skeletons like an offering. Then she opened the diary to the last blank page and wrote, "I remember. Thomas Thorne, Amelia Thorne. You were loved. You are home." She lit candles, every candle in the house, until the room blazed. The air shimmered. 2 small figures materialized, no longer translucent. Thomas's neck straightened with a soft pop. Amelia's eyes filled with tears that fell upward, becoming stars in the chandelier. "Thank you," they said together, voices clear as bells. The candles guttered. When Sarah blinked, the children were gone. The bones had crumbled to dust that swirled into the locket, sealing it shut. The diary's final entry appeared in her own handwriting, though she hadn't written it. "The house forgets when the debt is paid. Live here, Sarah. Plant new roses. Let the walls learn laughter again." She stayed. The whispers never returned. In spring, the roses bloomed blood red and fragrant. Sarah worked at the library, cataloguing local history, adding a discreet plaque in the children's section, in memory of Thomas and Amelia Thorne, who loved stories. Sometimes, late at night, she heard pages turning in the parlor. She'd find the diary open to a fresh entry, her own dreams transcribed in Eleanor's hand, or Margaret's, or perhaps the house itself remembering joy. Sarah would smile, close the book gently, and go back to bed. The key no longer scraped in the lock. The door opened for her as if glad to see her home.